Hello, everyone. This is Perspectives in Play, the language component, nurturing your child's language development from 0 to 3. Hold on one moment while I get our speaker on. Hey, Wendy.
Hi.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
I know a Wendy Silver too, so yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. That's okay.
Anyway, good to see you, and welcome back for part 2. So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Yep, I think we're all square.
Okay.
So, anyway, this is part 2 of Perspectives in Play, the speech component of it. Just a quick thing, just following up on yesterday. When I was, I'm sorry, let me start from the beginning. So this is Perspectives in Play, part 2, with our speech therapist, Marcy Silver, who yesterday spoke about language development from 0 to 2 years old. And today she's going to cover kind of 2 to preschool. So we'll get a little continuity there. I just wanted to mention a couple of quick things, then I'll hand it off to you. First thing I was thinking, yesterday we were mentioning how any language is excellent, that kids are exposed to. Driving home in the car, I heard a great comment on the radio about how we're used to a 3-dimensional world. So although I think everything we said yesterday made sense, there's nothing like personal interaction. So although Zoom is a good way to communicate, there's nothing like being with a person and really getting all the cues of being there together. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Marcy, but I thought that was an important thing to just bring out. And then the only thing I wanted to talk about with older kids is when we're talking about play in general, we move from parallel play to associative play to social play. And it's an important distinction, I think, when we're talking about speech, because parallel play, you're really focused on the object itself, where when you talk about associative play, the object is there, but the focus is really on your play partner. And
Absolutely.
Then when you develop the next step, which is social play, then the focus is on creating rules and structure with a play partner. So as you can imagine, language becomes increasingly important with all those different levels of complexity. Parallel play, you're simply talking about an object. Once you get to that point of associative play, you're talking and dialoguing with a play partner. And then once you're talking about social play, then you're at the point where you have to use language to create rules. So they become increasingly important. Just a couple of quick other points that I like to think about when you're talking about this age group is when you're talking about associative play, you also are talking about the creation of play partners. So instead of a parent necessarily being a vertical like a teacher, you really are going to be there with the child as someone they're functioning with. I don't think I'm saying this so well, but the 2 main points are, 1, kids develop empathy. They really do. They start to feel what's going on, and they talk to other kids. If someone falls on the playground, a 3-year-old will go over and ask how they're doing. So they start to have language that has to be able to handle emotions too, and that becomes a very large task for kids as well. And the other thing that they develop is the ability for fantasy or for imaginary play. So you might see your child have an imaginary friend, and it's important to allow that to develop by itself, but understand, again, that's kind of the concept of them creating their own play partner once they get to this level of play. I was a little disjointed, but I'm going to hand it off to you, Marcy, and let you run with this. So take it away.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm Marcy Silver, speech language pathologist in New York City. I go to people's homes. I do Zoom. I go to people's preschools, offices. I pretty much travel wherever you need me. And I'm also licensed in California, Connecticut, and maybe Florida soon. So I covered yesterday 0 to 2, and now we're getting into 2 to 5, preschool age. This is the fun, exciting. You can, you feel more related to your child when they start to use words. And, I like what you said. I think, this is one thing I tell my clients all the time about play dates. Everybody here is all about play dates. Get your kid play dates. Your child needs one good friend, right now, one good friend. If you can find someone he really connects with, or she just, I really think that's important to know, because when we think as adults, how many friends do we really have? Good friends that we can connect with? Not that many. Probably on our hand we could count. So, don't stress out about, having, as many as you can, just one or two. And actually also with children and toys, they have two hands. They only need, not a lot of toys. They need one figurine and one object to put the figurine in, take it out. Too many toys can be too much for a child. So I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to cover some feeding, speech sounds, speech intelligibility, morphology, which is syntax and word order. I'm also going to cover mean length of utterance, how many words they should have in a sentence, the social language, the literacy, both pre-linguistic, pre-literacy skills and literacy skills, and then concepts and questions and listening. So there's a lot that we need to talk about in terms of communication. So again, the muscles we learn for eating are the muscles we learn for speaking. So 2 years old, so I'm going to cover the speech sounds and what your children should have with speech sounds. So again, the first sounds we really make are P, B, M, H, N, W, and B. So those sounds you should have by two to 3. Those should be in, no problem. Okay, but we also have, things that can impact the production of those skills, and that is, pacifier, the bottle too long, sippy cups too long, that can change the way a child produces those sounds. So just to keep on the lookout. And then K and G, D and T, those come in around from 2 to 4. So you'll sometimes hear kids producing like a T for a K, like tight for kite, ting for king, and that we call that fronting. And that can be due to not using the back of their throat because of pacifiers, bottles, thumbs. So we want to keep an eye out, for sound changes. We call those substitutions. So, those are some things to look out for. And I'm going to give you pretty much a percentage of intelligibility rates in children, so you can kind of gauge if your child is intelligible, not so intelligible. And a lot of times parents will say, well, I understand him. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but strangers need to understand him, teachers, doctors, so that they can communicate their wants and needs. So super, super important to note. Developing sounds like ing. Sometimes you'll hear jump in instead of jump-ing. That's still, we still hear that a lot. So R, L, S, the ch, sh, z, j, v. Those are later developing sounds. The th, that can be anywhere from like 3.5 to, sometimes kids at 8 do that. However, I want to stress, children need to know so much more, so much younger now, that they're reading younger, they're learning to write younger than when I was in school. We were napping in kindergarten. So it doesn't hurt to fix it if we need to fix it. And it's an easy fix, any of those sounds. Speech therapy works for that. And it really will help them when they start to read if they're presenting that way. So that
Marcy,
being said, I'm just going to give you a...
Oh, no. Is there an age? Is there an age you intervene for sound, for articulation? or any age?
Yeah, I mean, you at any age. I mean, if I start as young as 2, if
Well,
they're unintelligible and I
mm-hmm.
need to get some of those sounds in. But it completely depends. Now, I'm going to give you an intelligibility level so you kind of have an idea. So from 19 to 24 months, a child should be anywhere from 25% to 50% intelligible. So, those 2-year-olds, yeah, they're going to be hard to understand. They're figuring it out. They might leave off endings of words. They might leave off the beginning of words. From 2 to 3 years old, they should be 50% to 75% intelligible. So you should be able to understand them most of the time. And then from 4 to 5 years, they should be 75 to 90% intelligible. Now, some things that can have the intelligibility could be hearing. They might not be hearing the sound. Manipulatives in their mouth that shouldn't be there. Form follows function. If their fingers in their mouth, their thumb is in their mouth, their teeth are going to grow around the thumb. It's going to grow around the pacifier. So that's why the production might not be good. And then we have tonsils and adenoids that also impact intelligibility. They might sound like they have a cold. They're very hyponasal. When they sound like a cold, they're stuffed up, and it could be the adenoids that are blocking the passageway. So I always, if I get a referral, I always refer for a full hearing and check the adenoids because that impacts intelligibility a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to cover language. And when I look at language, I look at form, and that's syntax, so the order of language, and then the endings that they use. So past tense, future tense, pronoun. They're called brown morphemes. So there's a list of brown morphemes, and we look to see what the child has. So for from 12 to 26 months, they start to use I and it. You can hear me, correct?
Yeah, sometimes it's coming in and out, but in general, it's okay. No.
Okay.
I think we're okay.
And then from 27 to 30 months, they start to use me and mine and you. And children this age are very egocentric, like you were talking about, just being involved with the object. They don't really care about anybody else but themselves. They're egocentric, that terrible two. So that's egocentrism. So me, mine, telling you what to do. So again, Piaget talks about the sensory motor system from 0 to 2 years, where they rely just on their sensory motor system. And then it becomes pre-operational from 2 to 7, which is they start to think symbolically. They start to change their way from just very concrete thinking to the symbolic thinking. So from 31 to 34 months, oh, look, they start to realize there's other people around. So yours, she, yours, we, they think of us together. So if you notice, all of these words start to make sense as to cognitively where they are. And then from 35 to 40 months, they start to use they, us, hers, his, them. So possessive pronouns come after because they're like, oh, I have to give up my toy to him or her. So they're very egocentric. So we have to take them out of themselves by showing them, there's other people, there's other toys, and that represents somebody else. That's why I'm a huge proponent of figurines, dolls, people. I come in and, a lot of kids have trains, trucks, but then there's no people. Like even with Thomas is a train that talks, but there's no person ride the train. And we ride the train, in New York. So just thinking in terms of buying toys, again, take out the batteries. No noise is good. Silence is good. And they need to talk. You need to show them that toys talk. And then you'll get a lot more language. And then from 41 to 46 months, they start to use it's, our, him, myself, yourself, ours, their, theirs. And then they start to even use more complex pronouns at 47 months: herself, himself, yourself, themselves. So it gets more complex as we go. So those are the pronouns that we look at, and that's why toys are really important. And that's why I'm going to give you, I wanted to wait till the middle so that if they're coming on, they know what toys to get for their child. So again, I'm a firm believer in no batteries, basic toys. What are they observing in the household? The kitchen, a little kitchen for them. They need, Mr. Potato Head. They need shopping. They need a vet. If you guys have a dog or a cat, they go to the vet. So they have a vet doctor's kit. They go to the doctor. Any of the jobs, firemen, dress up clothes, and then board games. I'm seeing that nobody board games anymore, because of all of the technology. So simple board games, Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, those are hard games, is what I'm realizing. If we don't have a good attention, if we don't take turns, there's a lot on the board. So you want to start simple, like don't spill the beans. The fishing game where there's a magnet, so they learn to take turns. So those are really good. And then books. I have a list that a speech language pathologist created where it shows what the target semantics and syntax is being targeted in each of the books. So, example, The Busy Spider or Brown Bear. There's a sequence there in what they want you to say. So it's super important. Like The Very Busy Spider works on pronouns. She was busy. Brown Bear. I see so it's showing you what that's present tense. Or are you my mother? They're structuring those books for a reason. So that's why, I say I have a list. If anybody wants it, they can, send me a note after and I can email it to you. So some of the grammatical morphemes we look at, and that's the Brown's morphemes, are pronouns. And then we have present progressive, the ing. He is crying. They start to use that around 19 to 28 months. And then they start to use the tenses, or the plural. They start to understand plural around 29 to 38 months. I had a call came in.
Yeah, I think
I put it on silent. You can hear me?
I can hear you now. You're up to plurals we were talking about.
Okay. Yeah, so plurals, and then they start to overgeneralize the past tense. So a lot of parents they're using the past tense. They say runned instead of ran, or they use those. So you'll see that around 29 to 38 months. Now, past tense should be in by 5. So you're going to hear some of those, and we call that overgeneralization. And then they also use gonna, gotta, wanna. That's on 29 to 38 months, you'll hear. And possessives, they start to get around 29 to 38 months. Girl's hat, boy's hat. And they start to understand can, will, be, and do. So that's, from 29 to 38 months. And then we have from 43 to 46 months, they start to really get regular past tense, the irregular past tense, the articles, a, boy, the, tree. And then from 47 to 50 months, they start to use that contractibles, the boys talking, uncontractable copula, it is big. So all of those things, so that's what the morphemes are. That's what I'm talking about, the real specific grammar elements. And there's a range, so, don't panic for sure. And then, the bilingual component I want to cover, because that was a huge question yesterday. Bilingual, they're going to confuse it a little bit. They're going to over exaggerate. They're going to use some, they're going to be experimenting with the language. So it's okay that they're doing that. So you'll see, normal bilingualism, age appropriateism, they're going to switch. They're going to do some of that. So it's okay. From, mean length of utterance, how many words in a sentence should they be using? Very quick reference. 1 year, 1 word. 2 years, 2 words together. About 2.5 words together. 3 years, 3 words together. 4 years, 4 words. And so on. So that's a good reference point for everybody. And then again, time out, same thing. 1 minute, 1 year. 2 minutes, 2 years. And then even from a storytelling standpoint, I always say a 2-year-old should be telling you a 2-step command, because that's what they understand. 3-year-old should be telling a 3-step story. And 4 should be telling a 4-step story. So there should be 4 sentences in a story. So, those are some reference points for you. Okay. From a social standpoint, this is really important for play, because we play to be social. We eat to be social. So eating is social, right? That's the first thing a child learns to do. They learn to breathe, and then they learn to eat, and they learn to eat with mom, who's breastfeeding them or feeding them a bottle. So talking is important during mealtime. Playing shouldn't be at mealtime. You should be communicating. Pragmatic. So we're gonna cover from 2 to 3 years. They should be watching other children and briefly joining in play. So, I hear, sometimes I go into preschools and they're like, oh, he's not socializing with other children. And they're like 2.5. I'm like, it's okay. They're parallel. Like, checking out the other person next to them, the other child, seeing what they're doing, but may not even go over there. So that's between 2 associative play. Again. Requests permission for items. So they start to request a little bit. Oh, I want that. I want the red car. They begin to use languages for fantasy, jokes, and teasing. So between 2 and 3, they start to pick up on that a little bit. And they pick up on what their older siblings are doing on that note. And then they make conversation repairs when the listener doesn't understand. So if they're not being understood from 2 to 3 years old, they are going to try and repair their language, say something different at a very young age. So, if the child is frustrated and is shutting down, that means there's a communication breakdown and that they may need some support. Biting, hitting, speech. It's usually speech that they need. And that's a behavior that parents tell me a lot. Oh, they're biting. Well, get them a speech eval, because they're probably frustrated. They're probably not able to think quick on their feet to get what they want out. So very important. From 3 to 4 years old, they should be following 2-step related directions without cues. So you give them a 2-step direction, they should be able to do that. Taking turns and playing cooperatively at 3 to 4, between 3 and 4 years old. You leave them in the other room with a friend, they can, play the garage with a car and some figurines. They can relate personal experiences through verbalization. Tell me what you did at circle time today. They should be able to tell you. Now, I have a lot of parents who say, oh no, they come home from school, they don't tell me anything. They don't tell me anything about their day. We have to be very specific with our questions, because how was your day is way too daunting for any child or any teenager. So anybody there, it's like, oh, it's good, So be very specific when you ask them, tell me who you played with at recess, or tell me, what your teacher was wearing today. So definitely be specific in your questions. I have a huge list of questions for parents. If you would like, you can always email me as well, the questions that you should ask your child. And that being said, New York City with preschool interviews, these private schools, it's stressful, and kids pick up on that stress of the whole preschool process. And I see that all the time. So, we want them to have fun. We want to know that adults are going to be asking them questions, and you're just going to practice doing that over time, not just the week before the interview, So it's really important to ask your child these questions and have a conversation and story tell. They separate from primary caregiver easily between 3 and 4. From 2 to 3, they're still at that object permanence stage where somebody goes, they know they're gone. It's like, oh, that object permanence. You put an object under something and then you remove it, they're going to look for it. So from 3 to 4, they start to be like, okay, bye mom, bye dad. I'm going to pre today. Pick me up later. And then they frequently practice conversation skills by talking to themselves. So if you leave them in another room, they should be able to have conversations with the figurines between 3 and 4. Or they're playing house, or they're playing doctor. They have conversations with each other, with figurines, with themselves. You'll hear that. And that's normal, pragmatic, social language. And that's why it's really important that, the television be off during play so that they can focus on their play. And then I'm not saying TV is bad, because TV also, there's some great programs on there. So really, I'm a firm believer in, if this child loves Batman, they need Batman figurines. They need to play and reenact what they see on TV, or they reenact the book that they read. Really fun, easy play for you and your child. And there's some great books out there that come with the figurines now, with all the Batman, the Spider-Man. They have Bubble Guppies, all the, the cool Sophia the First. I have all of those depending on what the child loves. Begins dramatic play. They start to dress up and act out and be the doctor, be the fireman, switch friends. And then they show frustration if not understood between 3 and 4. If they're frustrated because nobody's listening to them, they'll get upset. And I'm always, if a child has difficulty with their expression, like how you talked about that, they don't have the language. So we want to give them the language. We don't want to say use your, because they don't know what a word is. They don't read yet. So use your words means nothing to these kids. So you want to give them what you think is happening. I always say, I'm frustrated because you took the toy from me. Or I'm frustrated because I didn't want to move on from the activity. So give the language. Give them their feeling. And then they'll correct you if it wasn't the feeling that they were feeling. I wasn't tired. They'll tell you.
Marcy, is there a level where you use those charts, the color charts, where you have red, blue, yellow, and green, and then you explain what each one means, and you would say, how can I get you from the red or angry zone to the green zone, to kind of take bypass the language if it's not there yet? Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Like you can use visuals. And, I like to, again, like these kids are very, when they're upset, it's the world. I mean, adults too, we get upset where it's like nobody else has a problem. So you want to take them themselves. So role playing feelings, showing on video. Video is a great time to show emotions on different people. So watching anything on TV and be like, oh, look at his expression. He's angry right now. Oh, he's happy. He's laughing. So you have to take them out of themselves for feelings, especially, and role playing the situation. So they are expressing ideas and feelings at 3 to 4 years old. And then, from 4 to 5 years old, they're getting more sophisticated. They're following 3-step directions because they're 4 now. They can do 3 or more step directions. They use direct requests with justification. So they're going to say, stop that, you're hurting me, or don't do that. That's about 4 to 5, and they're using words to invite others to play. Hey, I want to play with you. Come play with us. Or, oh, I'm done with this activity. And they use language to resolve disputes with their peers from 4 to 5. So they can problem solve and say, you know what, it's in, and it's good. Sometimes they need adults to intervene, but they can do it. They can, and then usually if there's 2 or 3 playing, they work it out. Mm-hmm. And then they play competitive exercise games. They start to understand win and lose. And this is something I am huge about. Let your child lose. It's very important for them to know that. And I work on that a lot, just because I find there's kids that just don't get it because they don't let their kid lose. So then when they go to play with another kid, it's like they have a meltdown. So really important to show it's okay to lose. It's not, you're going to be better than you were last time, and that mistakes make you, change and do something different. So really important from 4 to 5 to start to, they get competitive, but that it's okay. And then they have good control over their conversations. They're able to switch the conversation. They're able to add to the conversation. And they speak of imaginary conditions around this time. They say, what if, or I hope. So those are some of the pragmatic social things that you'll hear in them. Okay. So that's social. Now, literacy, a huge, huge thing I see with, the interview process with schools. Oh, my kid needs to know his letters, his sounds. And, the kids that are interested in that, absolutely, they're ready. They're ready to know the letters and the sounds. The kids that aren't interested, they're not ready yet. They still need to be playing. And you can introduce letters through play and books and things like that. But when they're not ready, they're just not ready. So, don't stress about it. Some kids just need a little extra time. And then I have the kids that are hyperlexic, that know their letters and sounds very young. Mm-hmm. So again, if it's an interest to a child, I don't say no, and I don't deter it. I just add to it. If they're already reading or they already know their letters and sounds, let's work on phonological awareness with the child, or let's work on rhyming. Let's work on other things to keep increasing their skills at the same time. So very important to know. So from 2 to 3, so we talked about, how young literacy starts. So from 2 to 3 years old, they like to listen to books for longer periods of time. So from 2 to 3 years old, again, they're young. They might not sit. They might. And I have that question a lot. Like, oh, my kid won't sit for a story. So start off with short story, 1 to 2 pages, and then work your way up, even if it's a 1 to 2 page story. And, that's okay. If they need to stand at the table while they're reading, okay. but just, don't get frustrated. Don't say, oh no, he doesn't like to read. We just train the child to like it, to engage with it. At 2 to 3, they should be holding the book correctly. They should be they start to recognize logos, like, the things they see outside, like McDonald's, any of that stuff. They start to see logos. I'm trying to think, like Paw Patrol, if they see a Paw Patrol sign or any of that, they'll see logos. And then from 2 to 3, they also show a difference in writing versus drawing. So the OT will cover that because there's a whole level to writing and drawing, but you should see they should show a difference in their writing. And then from 3 to 4 years, they pay attention to specific print, such as the first letter of their name. So in preschool, they do, their name for so long that they start to recognize their name, their classmates' names. They start to understand, like, a woman versus man sign for the bathroom, or any of those signs. They just start to see it a lot. Or washroom. They see that a symbol carries a message to them. And then they start to identify some letters and make letter sound matches. At 3 to 4, they start to rhyme, talk about characters in a book. They like to read stories to each other and pretend that they're the teacher. They protest if an adult changes the story, if the adult decides they want a different story. And then they start to write their name a little bit. They write letters, and they try to write like we do at 3 to 4. And then, from 4 to 5, they understand a sequence, a story sequence. They understand a function and purpose of print. They know many letter names and sounds, letter sounds. So really, really, I think literacy is super, super important. I think that, but I think we forget that play is much more important, and the cognitive piece to it. But I'm not against it. I think that if a child, again, they're interested, you expose them to it. I have kids that the parents, like, they're just so interested and their language is low, or, and I say, why not? If they're successful at it, bring it. You want to continue to foster the children's strengths and their interests. Because you just don't know, what, I have a kid that all he does is love to read, and he gets caught at night in the middle of the night reading. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Good for you. So that was literacy. I'm going to cover concepts, them understanding concepts. So we talked about the following directions. So from 3 to 4 years old, they start to understand empty, a lot, the equality of directions, the same versus both. They understand beside and between. They identify the colors. They match one-to-one correspondence. So they should be counting. They should be able to recognize if you give them, 2 or 3 of something, show me more, show me 2 of something. I find a lot of kids, sometimes they don't have that number they say number correspondence. So really taking the time to count with them, and that pointer finger, again, it's really important for counting and moving the pieces in the direction to know, okay, we already counted that one. Because I see a lot of kids that will start 1, 2, and then they miss. So you want to really point that out to them. They understand the different points to the object and knows it's different. They understand behind, in front, around. And then they understand big. So from 4 to 5, that's when they understand the big, bigger, biggest. They understand yesterday, today, tomorrow. So calendar concepts, a huge, huge thing in preschool. And storytelling. So but from 4 to 5 years old, they start to really understand that. If they don't understand it and it's confusing to them, Sometimes that can be a red flag at that age. From 4 to 5, get them evaluated, because it's something that we see in children with, it's a sequence. Calendar is a sequence, it's an order. And if they don't understand order and sequence, that impacts reading, because reading is a sequence and an order. So very important. Next, days of the week, last week, next week, hard for, so they should know those, 4 and 5 years old. And then identifying position concepts, first, middle, last. Okay, so those they should get by 4 and 5. So when I look at a child and how they tell a story, I look at 3 different stories. I look at a procedural narrative. That's a how-to narrative. Tell me how you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Tell me how you play Chutes and Ladders. Okay? That's a procedural narrative. I can tell a child's sequence very young. So I ask a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old how to do those things. So again, I said they need to have 2-step, make 2 sentences for 2, 3 for 3, and they use, we call them temporal markers. First, next, then last. That's the procedural narrative. Then I look at a story retell. You give them a story, they have to tell it back to you. And they, should include characters, setting, the peak of the story, the conclusion of the story. So I look at those types of narratives. And then the last one is personal narrative. Tell me your favorite vacation. Tell me your favorite day at school. And that's a whole other thing. So, we really know where the child's at when we ask them those things. And then lastly, I want to cover questions. So we talked yesterday about where, what's that, yes, no questions. Very simple, 1 to 2. Now 2 to 3, they start to understand position of objects. What do you wear on your head? Simple WH questions logically. What do you do when you're cold? They should be able to answer, what's that? What are you doing? Who is that? And they should be able to answer and understand, can you questions. So those are from 2 to 3 years old. And that's just answering questions. Answering questions is receptive language, what they understand. So those, we call them simple WH questions. Who, where, what questions. From 3 to 4, they start to get more complex, and that's what they should be able to answer: who, why, where, and how questions from 3 to 4. If something happens, what? That they should be able to understand that. If it starts raining, what would you do? Those are from 3 to 4. What are spoons for? Why do we have shoes? Those are all questions that they should understand. And then 4 years old, they start to understand when questions. When are we going to school? When are we going on vacation? Again, it's all sequential in nature because they go to preschool and they learn the calendar. And so they start to understand that. So very, very important. And then from an asking standpoint, they ask why questions from 3 to 4 all the time. They're like, why? And they use what, where, when, how, whose questions. They ask is questions. They ask, from 3 to 4 years old. And then 4 years old, they start to ask, do you want to? They use future tense. Are we going? So those are really important, the asking. And then last, I'm going to cover listening, because listening is something I see, there's so much going on in this world. We're so distracted by technology. We're so distracted by work. Adults, we're distracted. So we have to teach our kids to listen, and we have to teach ourselves to listen. That's something that, I struggle with just from work and being so caught up. So from 3 to 4, they attend to name being called from another room. So if you're in the other room, they'll come. And they understand simple WH questions, like Ed, and they understand simple questions pertaining to their activities and their environment. And they improve listening and begin to learn from listening. So they start to learn to listen. They start to learn from listening from 3 to 4. And that's why we send them to preschool, so that they can do that. And then from 4 to 5 years old, they attend to a short story and answer simple questions about it. They hear and understand most of what is at home and in school. So you got to be careful of that, because they come back to school telling all. And they're able to repeat 4 digits when they are given it slowly. And they're able to follow simple commands involving remote objects. So again, they're able to start to, they follow multi-step commands. So that's basically that. I just wanted to cover the red flags again, so that you know when to refer, or when you think your child, you're concerned about your child. And I always say, when in doubt, check it out. Very important. Don't wait, evaluate. And, my advice, early intervention used to be a really thriving program. There was a lot of money, EI, and now the funding isn't what it was. So when it's pretty much a free service to anyone. Our, tax dollars pay for it. However, you have to be significant to qualify now. Significant. So when they say he doesn't need it, if you feel in your heart that he needs it, then, you get a second opinion. Because I'm finding so many kids, they go through the cracks because, there's just no funding for it anymore. So the real significant, if you're born with something, you absolutely get it and need it. But then, I used to see kids that just needed a little thing, and they don't see that. I don't see that anymore. So from 36 months, strangers have difficulty understanding what the child is saying, and they do not use simple sentences at 36 months. Important to definitely refer. If you can't understand them, they're not saying certain sounds, you don't understand. I think it's just frustration. And then also, are they a picky eater? Do they have difficulty with transitions? Are they showing no interest in communication? Are they drooling excessively? Are they stuttering? Are they repetitive and only fixated on one activity? Those are just some of the other concerns that I see. But I feel like, I always just, trust the gut of mom and dad. If they feel there's something, definitely wait. And I think, these kids have to do so much more. Now they're expected to do so much more. It's the information age. Some of the jobs that used to be aren't. So we have to, these kids have to be doing things, but doesn't mean we have to put the pressure on them. They're going to get there when they get there, but they might need just a little bit of help from the speech therapist.
Man, thanks so much.
I'm trying to, yeah, I think that's, pretty much it.
I think one quick question I had was, is stuttering a red flag? I always feel like stuttering is kind of the brain working quicker than the processing, but do you consider that a red flag?
So from 0 to 5, considered developmental. If a child stutters beyond the age of 5,
Mm-hmm.
it's may be with them for.
Mm-hmm.
So stuttering's tricky. I always take a stuttering client, but there are specialists in stuttering that just focus on stuttering. So if I can't help, but there's no known cause. It's 4-to-1, boys to girls. It can be environmental, early on, but if it's genetic, if there's a stutterer in the family,
Mm-hmm.
it's genetic. And
Right,
so,
right.
You have to be careful of that. But, stuttering is a tricky, I always see them and then I
Mm-hmm.
refer and I let them know that I'm not an expert, but I can handle, I can try what I know, but.
And then when for
that's a good question.
Articulation, when do you usually think you would refer for a lisp or the T or R sounds?
So that's a good question. I mean, if the child is stimulable for the sound, if they understand that, because it's an abstract concept for a child to keep their tongue behind their teeth, mm-hmm. if they get that cognitively, I say fix it, do it. Mm-hmm. If they're not ready, so I always do like a free, let's try it. If they don't get it, we wait. So yeah, T into a lip, so they first have to put their tongue behind their teeth for T and then push air out. So it's, mm-hmm. and then the R is the hard sound to treat as a speech therapist too. So that's R is the hardest sound. It's very abstract to a child. But sometimes they're stimulable and you're able to do that. And stimulable means if you give them some strategies right away on the sound and they get it, mm-hmm. then they're ready.
Got it.
And with the R, your tongue needs to be dissociated from the rest of your articulators. So you should be able to make the R sound without moving your lips, and your jaw moves, but your tongue should be doing all the work. So that's what's so hard, because you have to dissociate all your articulators for R, and it depends on what vowel precedes it, that your jaw position. So it's a tricky sound.
Well, thanks so much, Marcy. I mean, it's been a wonderful couple of days. I know I've learned a tremendous amount. And everybody, if you wanted to reach out to Marcy Silver, if you just look her up, she has tremendous resources, and she in of herself is a tremendous resource. So I'm sure we'll talk again, but thank you again.
Paul. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
Cool. Marcy, just give to reach you, what's the website?
It's actually, you can just email me at silverspeechspeakingseries@gmail.com, or you can call me at 917-843-2252.
Perfect. All right, Marcy. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Bye.